So in my last video you would have seen me harvesting all the broad beans, and this is the end result. Just look at that. One enormous container full of broad beans, and some kept, some prime ones for seed for next year. So I'm going to adjust this, I think, for pounds and ounces. I'm not going to worry too much about the weight of the container, which isn't much. And 6 pounds basically of broad beans to be divided up and bagged and put into the freezer. Good times. Of course, the compost heap's going to benefit as well. That's going to top it off for a while. What's a beautiful temperature out here. Today I'm going to carry on the recovery of the plot from my few days away, and I think I'm heading into the Polytunnel. I've had a few, well, not radical decisions, but I thought I might do something significant in there to try and recover it. And then, well, there's a few things to do out here. We'll see if we get to them. So I've given everything a really good water to try and ascertain what's in good condition and what needs a bit of help. And on the face of it, these big plants, this is the super sweet tomato. Now, one of the reasons why I don't grow this type of tomato is because of how big a space it ends up taking, and I choose to grow more of the bush varieties, although these Romas are looking pretty big and certainly need a bit of organisation. And this super sweet has, well, all but collapsed. So I'm thinking I'm going to strip back leaves where plants are getting a bit out of hand. That's probably the Aromas. And this very large plant and the one down the other end, I'm thinking I'm going to clip out the top. The advice I was given when I was given these plants was to get to a couple of trusses and then terminate each branch, and I haven't done that, so I'm sure it's my own fault. And then in the beds I've got quite a lot of bolted lettuce, so they're needing to come out, have a bit of a tidy up. And these bush varieties, which is Latar, the weight of the tomatoes has just pulled them down, so it might be a bit of construction work to get them to lift again. And then my house tomatoes have got lots of dead growth in them, not quite sure why, but I need to remove that. So it's quite a lot of work to do, and the temperature in here today is not bad at all, so I'm just going to have a leisurely work round and not rush at it. I'll put it on time lapse for you. Oh, one other thing. I think I'm going to take down all this shading, because I'm of the opinion that if I expose the fruit so that they can ripen, then this probably isn't helping now, and I don't think is necessary. So I'm going to remove that as well. Well, it got instantly warmer once I took that shading down, and a lot brighter, so I'm sure that'll help to ripen off all of the tomatoes that are on their way. And well, it's got too warm to be wearing this fleecy top, so I'm going to take that off as well. Right, let's carry on. Well, that felt pretty radical to me, and I don't know whether it's the right thing to have done or not. I'm really interested to know from all the viewers and subscribers, when your tomatoes get to the point where you think they're sort of taking over, losing structure, perhaps falling over a bit, then what do? Do you strip the leaves back? Do you prevent that happening earlier? Is that the failing that I tend to get into, that I allow the plants to get out of hand? Part of that, I think, was because there was a pretty strong growth while I've been away, but I'm very interested to know what's considered to be the right method of dealing with it. My house tomatoes seem to have lots of dead leaves in the middle, and that seems to sort of turn to a powdery mildew, which I think is trouble. And well, I don't know. Please put in the comments what your views are, what method you adopt. I am absolutely convinced that everybody would benefit from sharing that information. Right, well, it feels more under control. I feel a bit better, which I suppose is part of it. And there's a little bit more to do in here, but I think I'll just let it get over that shock and sort of reevaluate over the next day or two. But I can see the tomatoes for the foliage, as it were, and it feels like what's there will get exposed to some good sunlight now. There's still a bit of structural work to do there. And I took off, I don't know, 2 or 3 trusses of the super sweets and probably a dozen other tomatoes in the process. So I lost some tomatoes, but to be honest with you, there is so many tomatoes here. I am not going to miss 2 or 3 or half a dozen or a dozen even. So there we go. What I did see when I came down here was some great development in the carrots. Let me show you. I did have a bit of a collapse on the cucumbers, but they're still doing fine. Plenty of cucumbers, more than we need. But if you look in here, notwithstanding the weeds, of which there are some, like that fella, but if you look down, I got quite a nice carrot developing, and that one looks like, yeah, it's definitely got a bit of a branch going off of it. Let's have a look at another one. Yeah, they're all about inch and a half, so they're coming on nicely, and it will be some considerable time before I start to think about harvesting any of those, because I do like them to get fairly big before I harvest them. Right, I think I'm going outside. It's a bit cooler out there. So we've got a couple of good days of weather. In fact, looking at the forecast, about 5 or 6. So I'm thinking now might be a good time to pull some of the onions that I'm thinking are really ready for getting out of the ground. And I think that includes my Globo onions, which are definitely all browning off now. And I think probably ready to just dry off. I do think that these shallots have got a little way to go. There's no browning on the leaves at all, so I think I'm going to leave those. And then my Bedfordshire Champion and I think Elsa Craig, I think I'm going to pull as well, because they're starting to brown, and I'm particularly anxious in here because of this sort of emerging falling over of onions that I'm witnessing at the back end. So I really don't want that to get a hold on any of the rest of the crop. So I think it's time to take onions out, and I think I'm going to start with these, work my way down until I see some white rot, which I suspect, and then we'll go from there. Right, just for the fun of it, I'm going to pull a couple of the bigger ones and show you. There's a nice healthy root on there, I'm pleased to say, and the same with that one next to it. These Bedfordshire Champions don't seem to have had any problems. Oh, I spoke too soon. Let me show you. So 2 really good healthy onions, and then 1 with obvious signs of white rot around the base. And you can see how the root structure is just not as well developed, and that's a sure sign. So any of these are going to one side, and what we'll do is we will prepare those straight away and freeze them as chopped onion. And we found that to be the best way to deal with an onion that's got white rot and not waste too much. And these, they'll go in the barrow, and we'll put those in a drying location. Well, I'm sure you can already see that there is an awful lot of onions affected by white rot. And this bed had nothing grown in it before of the onion family. So it's clearly in the ground, in the compost. And you get to the point where you can tell what's going to happen when you grab hold of the onions. So this one is not very well rooted, and it's got white rot. This one looks like it's falling over, and it literally picks up off the ground, and it's full of white rot. This one looks a bit tougher, and it's okay. This one is taking a big tug, and that's okay. So yeah, it's as simple as that. The roots are absolutely decimated, and the onion just pulls freely out of the soil versus a well-developed root system and a tug. Okay, carry on. So there we have it. Probably 2/3 of the crop damaged by white rot, and that's not the end of the world. When you look at what we'll be storing from that bed, there's quite a lot of good onions, which will be fine. And this just means that we've got to work faster. Just got to get the tops off, get the roots off, peel the onion, mince it up, get it in freezer bags, and it makes good food for the winter. No degradation in my experience, unless the onion really is in a very bad way. So that's changed my plans for this afternoon. I am going to do exactly the same with the Globo to have a look, but in here we'll just weed this. That one looks well past it, and then we can get to putting those in the sunshine, and hopefully they'll brown up nicely. The tops will die off, and I'll just keep an eye on them, make sure that there's no white rot development on them as the week goes on. Well, most importantly, a change of gloves. Put those over there, and I can now take these good onions and put them out to dry, and I'm going to do that up on the black membrane there, because, well, the heat is great and there's no or very little damp coming up from beneath, so it seems like a good place to put these. If it rains, it won't be the end of the world. I just need to find somewhere to put them where there's cover. Right, let's get these up there. Right, well, let's see. I'm thinking that everything that looks a bit dodgy in the middle is going to have white rot, and everything that looks green and large is probably going to be okay. So fingers crossed I'll be wrong. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to tug some of these sad looking ones in the middle and see if they just pull out. Yep. So everything there is going to be a problem. And we're going to have a very busy afternoon. Who knows, maybe even evening, chopping up onions today. Let's see how much further it goes. Yep. 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 That's the first couple with resistance. That one's out. That's okay. Nope. No. 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 Looks like this end is in a really bad way. Oh, that one's got some tug on it. No. Just about. I don't trust these at all. So they're going in for the chop. No. Nope. Such a shame. They look so good, but they just don't feel right. I would imagine if you're doing onions for show, this would be extremely demoralising, but it's not the end of the world for me. I've learnt to live with white rot. That's a beauty, look at that. So these are definitely storers. That one's a little bit suspect, I'm afraid, so there's 3 there. And I'm hopeful for this corner. Yeah, that's okay. Yep. Nope. Nope. Yeah, that one's okay. Beautiful onions when they are not infected by disease. That's a problem one. Saves that one. That one's okay. That one's okay. You can tell because they're so much bigger when they've not been damaged. I'm very suspect to that one. That's okay. That one's not. Give that one the benefit of the doubt. The worst that can happen is it doesn't store well. So there we are. Out of that, probably half a dozen onions that were okay, but all of them edible. Well, for those of you that are poised at the keyboards and about to say, Malcolm, don't walk on it, you'll spread it on your shoes. Well, I think this marks the official moment when all of my beds have got white rot. I think I've exhausted pretty much everywhere that I thought I could grow onions without getting it. So my concerns over spreading it are now almost zero. So I will take care, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. I've learned that you can live with white rot by growing your onions in the same soil. If you chop some white rot infected green foliage and onions into the bed, seem to have some success, and you get a portion of your onions that will be okay and a portion that need processing quickly. And that's the way I'm going to work going forward. Good times. Well, that's a huge bucket of onions to be heading in the freezer. It won't take quite that much space once it's been peeled and chopped, but it will take quite a bit of space. But hey, better to keep the food than to see it go to waste. And the other onions will dry hopefully over the next couple of days in the sunshine. So we've got a fair amount for storage, which is not bad at all. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. And if you did, why not like and subscribe? And if you want my updates every Wednesday and every Sunday at 8 PM, then click on the bell. Diolch yn fawr.